Hello, folks. Tonight, we travel back over 500 years to the golden, sandy edge of the Sahara. You're lying on a coarse straw mat, your breath still sticky from last night's heat. The thick scent of dust and woven reeds curls around your nose as light from the early sun slips past a flap in the dormitory's wall. It's morning in 15th century Timbuktu, and the school day is already stretching, yawning and groaning to life. Your ears pick up the dull stir of sandals brushing across the packed dirt floor, and a throat or two clearing in that too early tone you know too well. If you're lucky, you've got a corner near the wall and no one snoring too loudly next to you. If you're not, well, you'll spend the morning explaining to your tutor why you showed up with a forehead full of blanket impressions and yesterday's ink still smeared on your cheek. You're one of about 20 boys crammed into a dormitory attached to a madrasa, a place where Quranic memorization, scholarship, and philosophical debates unfold daily, like layers of a palm leaf manuscript. And you're tired. Not like forgot my coffee tired, but memorized a dozen new verses and had to hide my bread from rats tired. The kind of tired where even the morning breeze sounds smug about being awake. You probably won't survive this, let's be honest. But hey, at least your blanket is only mostly covered in sand. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, where are you listening from and what time is it right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You blink against the dusty light filtering through a slatted window. If you can call a square hole in mud brick a window, someone nearby groans, stretching bones that crack like twigs in dry season. Another boy stirs and promptly kicks over his sleeping mat, prompting a ripple of curses. You roll to your side, stretch, and hit your elbow on the mat post of your roommate. You whisper an apology you don't quite mean. No one has their own bed here. Not really. Most of you sleep on straw mats, and if you're lucky, you might get a woven cotton sheet or a sheepskin blanket in the cold months. But right now it's dry season and everything, your skin, the air, the floor, feels slightly sunbaked even before sunrise. You cough into your shoulder. It's half dust, half yesterday's charcoal from the cooking fire. You rub your eyes and think about pretending to sleep 5 more minutes. But the dorm warden is already coming down the row, tapping a carved stick against the door frame. Tap, tap. A quiet warning. You get the message. Outside, the town of Timbuktu is just beginning to murmur. Donkeys bray from their pens, and the call to prayer hums through the stillness. It's not loud. It never is. But it reaches your bones anyway. You slip on your robe, still damp from yesterday's sweat. You check your wooden tablet or law, the one where you'll write verses later. You've sanded it clean with a mixture of ash and water, and you carry it like it's gold. Because here in this city, writing isn't just important, it's sacred. Historians still argue whether Timbuktu truly had hundreds of thousands of manuscripts, or if that number's a little romanticized. But everyone agrees that it was a center of learning so bright. Scholars walked for months just to enroll in its schools. And you're already enrolled. So why are you dragging your feet? Outside, the dorm's front arch frames a view of the rising sun over the low city. The clay walls glow a little orange. The domes of the Sankor Mosque catch the light. You blink against it, because you're still not fully awake, and also because someone just flung their wash water out the door without looking. It lands inches from your sandals. You let out a sleepy groan of protest, but the culprit is already halfway to the washroom, snickering. Classic Yausuf. He'll trip over his own robes someday, and you'll be there to laugh first. You follow the others across the compound, your toes sinking into the warm dust. The school's compound is surrounded by a clay wall about shoulder height. Beyond it, rooftops sprout low, flat houses and palm trees that somehow survive the sun. There's a tiny courtyard, a well, and the echo of someone starting to sing. A melody of morning prayer floats in the air like a breeze through date palms. You pause for just a moment, letting the sound settle in your chest. It's quiet, yes, but not empty. It feels like something ancient is waking up, right alongside you. A boy named Musa walks beside you, muttering the first lines of a verse under his breath. He's always memorizing something. Even in his sleep, he mouths lines of Arabic poetry like he's in a dream lecture. You reach the washroom. It's more of a stone basin, really, fed by a clay pipe from the nearby well. There's a lineup already. Half the boys are sleep-leaning against the wall, waiting for their turn to scoop cold water over their heads. One is humming through his nose, too tired to speak, too awake to be silent. You kneel at the basin, splash your face, and feel your skin tighten under the cold shock of water. It's a little like waking up twice. You rub sand from your eyes, rinse your mouth, and try not to think too hard about how many feet have stood in this exact spot before you. Spoiler, it's a lot. And not all of them had the best hygiene habits. Your robe sticks to your back. The sun's only just started climbing, but already the heat leans in like an overeager tutor. You dry your face with the edge of your sleeve and mutter a few sleepy prayers under your breath. You're not the best reciter, but you try. The guy next to you belts out his verses like he's aiming for a heavenly talent show. You ignore him and focus on the words, the rhythm, the way the syllables shape your breath. As you return toward the dorm for your slate and ink pot, a bird perches on the roof's edge. It's a little sunbird with feathers like spilled oil. You smile. It chirps, then promptly poops on the wall. You stop smiling. Back inside, boys are folding mats and brushing off the sand that always finds its way into everything. Your mat is already half claimed by someone else's toes. You kick them off gently. They grunt. You collect your tablet, your tiny ink pot made from a hollowed-out seed pod, and your reed pen. It's time to head toward the study hall. But first, breakfast. And by breakfast, we mean whatever the kitchen remembered to make. Today it's millet porridge, slightly overcooked and definitely undersweetened. You scoop a handful into your bowl and sit beside Musa, who's still reciting verses in between mouthfuls like he's trying to impress the millet. You joke that his porridge might memorize the Quran faster than he does. He throws a peanut at you. 1 bite, 2 bites, a pebble. Ouch. You discreetly spit it into your sleeve and pretend nothing happened. A tutor passes by, nods once, and you all sit a little straighter. You glance down at your slate, your half-clean robe, your stained fingers. Another day begins. You follow the others out into the courtyard, stomach humming a quiet, porridgey protest as the morning stretches itself across the sky like a lazy cat. The air's still got a crisp edge, but not for long. Soon it'll settle into that thick, invisible blanket of heat that makes your robe stick to every part of you it has no business clinging to. You squint upward, the sun already making its opinions known. Feet shuffle across the dusty path toward the ablution fountain, tucked near the northern wall of the compound. You already did a quick wash earlier, but now it's time for wudu, the formal ritual purification. Not optional. If you try to skip it, you'll get a look from your tutor so disappointed, it'll follow you into your dreams like a gilt-colored camel. The fountain is little more than a stone trough fed by a clay pipe, but it glistens faintly in the growing sunlight, and for a moment it feels like something sacred. You and the others line up. Some whisper softly to themselves. Some hum. One boy, Ahmed, keeps trying to flick water at everyone like it's a pool party, until someone elbows him. Hard. Peace restored. You dip your hands in. Cool water coats your fingers, then your mouth, your nose, your arms up to the elbow. Your face stings slightly, maybe from yesterday's sun, or maybe because Musa slapped your cheek a little too hard while demonstrating a hadith. He claims it was accidental. You have your doubts. There's something calming about the rhythm of it all. The deliberate movements, the shared silence. A sense that everyone, no matter how loud or annoying they are during the day, starts off clean. At least physically. Spiritually, well, that's still up for debate. You finish your ablution and step back to let the next boy forward. You find a patch of shade under a stubby neem tree and kneel. The morning prayer has already begun. A few lines drift over the courtyard wall, carried from the nearby mosque. You recite along in low tones, careful to keep your voice level, your pace steady. You sneak a glance sideways. Yusuf is chewing on a date pit during prayer again. Disrespectful, but also smart. That thing lasts forever and keeps your mouth from drying up like an old sandal by midday. Some scholars think the prevalence of such dormitory systems across Timbuktu speaks to the incredible value placed on Islamic education here. Others argue it was just the only practical way to accommodate students who came from hundreds of miles away. Either way, here you are, one kid in a sea of sleep-deprived, half-hungry scholars in training trying to avoid flunking divine law at 6:45 in the morning. After prayers, you file back toward the dorm to gather your writing tools. It's almost time for Quranic recitation. But before that, you've got just enough time to breathe for a second, if you're lucky. You perch on a short mud brick ledge near the well and listen to the wind tug at the palm fronds overhead. For a moment, all the scolding, the memorization drills, the peer rivalry fades. Just wind, just water trickling nearby, just the faint thrum of the desert waking up, and then crack, a sharp pop behind you. You whirl around. It's the dorm warden again, snapping that same carved stick against the post. He doesn't even say anything. He doesn't need to. His raised eyebrow does all the talking. You scramble up and fall into step behind Musa, muttering a few not-so-sacred words under your breath. The dormitory halls are narrow, and your feet slap softly on the worn stone floor. The building curves around the compound like a lazy snake. Doorways yawn open to other rooms. Some hold tutors, others scrolls and tablets, others mysterious supplies no student has ever dared investigate without getting smacked with a broom. You pass the room with the water jars. One's cracked again. The same one as last month, You told them it would break again if they patched it with dried gum instead of linen fiber. They didn't listen. They never do. Back in your study room, the morning class is already beginning. The tutor sits at the front, tall and lean, with a beard that could double as a bookmark. He gestures for everyone to sit, and so begins the chant. One by one, students recite the verses they memorized yesterday. Some stumble, some shine. One forgets everything and starts mumbling lyrics to a market song until the tutor stares him down into silence. When it's your turn, you rise. Your voice shakes a little at first, but you find your rhythm. The words flow, verse by verse. You don't stumble. And when you finish, the tutor nods, not a big gesture, just a small tilt of approval, but it feels enormous. Historians still argue whether students in Timbuktu's madrasas memorized the entire Quran in sequence or used a more modular, thematic approach. Some say there was a strong oral tradition guiding the structure. Others insist the written organization in manuscripts reflects the method exactly. But you just hope you can get through the week without forgetting Surah al-Kahf again. As the session continues, you copy fresh lines onto your slate with a thin reed pen. The ink is made from soot, acacia sap, and water. It smells faintly smoky. You drag the tip carefully across the wood. Each line must be precise. Too wet and it smudges. Too dry and it scratches. One boy near the corner has already broken his pen nib twice. He mutters something about cursed wood. By mid-morning, your hand aches, your spine protests, your eyes blur a little. But the tutor finally signals a pause. Everyone exhales at once, except Musa, who keeps reciting under his breath like a possessed auctioneer. You lean against the wall and let your fingers cool. A fly buzzes lazily past your ear. You swat at it. Miss, try again. Miss, give up. The fly wins, as always. Near the doorway, someone's scratching something into the wall with a shard of pottery. You glance over. It's a drawing of a camel wearing a turban, with an arrow pointing to it labeled Ibn Camel. You snort softly. Someone's getting a beating when that's discovered. A whisper from behind catches your attention. Ahmed leans close. Tutor's in a good mood today. Maybe we'll get early break. You don't believe him for a second, but the hope lingers anyway. The tutor clears his throat. All spines straighten. His voice, calm but edged with that terrifying clarity, announces it's time for group recitation practice. You groan internally. Here comes round 2, but not before he shares a short hadith, followed by a riddle. He does this sometimes to keep things lively or confuse you into thinking he has a sense of humor. Today's riddle is strange. What grows smaller the more you share it, but never leaves you empty? The room tilts in thought. One brave boy says, "Water in a leaky bowl." The tutor blinks, then smiles. "Knowledge," he says, then adds, "but your answer shows promise, just bad plumbing." Everyone laughs, even the sleepy ones. It's a rare moment of softness. You cling to it. Because soon the heat will climb, your stomach will growl again, and the tutor's humor will dry up faster than a puddle in midday sun. The air inside the study room thickens. Not with tension exactly, but with a kind of sleepy devotion. You sit cross-legged on the floor, law resting on your lap, shoulders barely touching the boys beside you. The sunlight slants through a slit window high on the wall, turning floating dust into golden soup. And your tutor, still seated on his worn cushion at the front, taps his stick lightly against his knee to call for quiet again. You've entered the memorization hour, which sounds way more exciting than it actually is. See, you've already recited your verses for the day, but now comes the true challenge, sitting still long enough to internalize the next batch. You're not just reading them, you're absorbing them, tasting them, letting each syllable melt into the folds of your brain until you could recite it backward, sideways, or in the middle of a nap with someone throwing pebbles at your head. Which, incidentally, is what Ahmed is doing right now. You flick a pebble back. It misses and hits Yusuf, who's asleep. He jolts upright, looks around wildly, then mutters something about divine lightning and immediately starts reciting Surah al-Falaq just in case. The tutor doesn't even flinch. He's seen worse. One time last week, a kid fell asleep drooling on his slate and woke up with ink patterns that made it look like he'd been cursed. For a second, even the tutor looked nervous. Back to the lesson. You run your fingers over the carved script on your wooden slate. Each word is a friend you haven't met yet. You whisper them slowly, then a little faster, then faster still until the rhythm becomes a song stuck behind your teeth. In the corner, Musa is doing his usual rock backhand forth thing. He says it helps him remember verses better. You tried it once. It made you dizzy and you knocked over the ink pot. Ink on the robe, ink on the mat, ink on the floor. You claimed it was spiritual overflow. The tutor was not amused. Historians still argue whether students in medieval West Africa memorized material purely through oral drills, or if they relied heavily on writing, despite limited access to paper. Here in your dormitory, the truth is somewhere in between. You write with ink and memorize by ear, often singing verses or rhyming them under your breath. Sometimes the melodies sneak into your dreams, looping like forgotten lullabies. Just when your mind starts to fog, the tutor claps once. That means break, real break. Not the fake ones where you just shift from memorizing one thing to another. This is full stretch, water-drinking, dirt-kicking break time. You leap up like your mat's on fire. Everyone floods into the courtyard like goats set loose from a pen. A few boys head straight for the shade of the neem trees. Others collapse on their backs and stare at the sky like it holds secrets. You follow Musa to the well, cup your hands, and drink deeply. The water's warm, but you pretend it's cool, because why ruin the fantasy? Ahmed challenges Yusuf to a stone-skipping contest across a shallow irrigation ditch. It's dry. The stones don't skip. They thud. Yusuf claims victory anyway. Typical. Nearby, one of the older boys pulls out a folded palm leaf board and begins sketching geometric shapes with a stick of charcoal. You lean over his shoulder. Lines, curves, hexagons inside circles. It looks like magic. Math, he says, smug. You squint. Looks like a spider tried calligraphy. You mutter. He snorts. Quirky fact. Some students in Timbuktu weren't just studying religious texts. They were learning astronomy, law, and even medicine. There's a rumor about a manuscript buried in the mosque library that describes how to treat snake bites with powdered baobab bark and 7 drops of camel urine. Historians still argue whether this was real treatment or a prank played on slow students. Either way, you're never volunteering to test it. Your break's not long, but it's enough to stretch, snack, and forget for just a moment how much your brain hurts. You lie back in the shade, arms crossed behind your head, and stare at the flat blue sky. No clouds, no birds, just you, your thoughts, and the faint clatter of someone dropping their ink pot again inside. They're probably crying already. The bell rings. Not a bell exactly, more like the sound of someone banging a pot with a stick, but it means class resumes. You sigh, and up you go. Back inside, back to the grind. This time you sit in pairs, peer review, because if you can teach it, you know it. That's what the tutor says. Also, probably because he needs 10 minutes to rest his voice and sip tea. You pair with Musa naturally. He recites, you correct. You recite, he corrects harder. It turns into a duel of whispered Arabic and increasingly dramatic sighs. You pretend to faint when he misquotes a verse. He hits you with a rolled-up date leaf. The tutor eyes you both, but doesn't interfere. He knows this is part of the rhythm. The whispering, the repetition, the gentle bickering, it's how the words get inside. Someone in the back is singing their verse like a love ballad. Another chants so slowly it sounds like he's narrating a tragedy. Everyone has their style. The tutor lets it slide unless it gets too wild. No opera voices, that's the only rule. Well, that and no ink fights. After last time. As the hour ticks by, your body goes stiff from sitting. Your fingers are stained with ink again. Your stomach mumbles something rude. But you keep going, because that's what you do. Learning here isn't glamorous. It's not smooth parchment and gold leaf. It's cracked slates, frayed robes, broken reed pens and hard floors and endless repetition. But it's real. And somewhere beneath the ink and the aches, you know you're building something old, something sacred, something that thousands of others have passed down, breath to breathe, pen to pen. The call to noon prayer floats over the rooftops just as your knees begin to ache from sitting too long. It comes gentle at first, like a whisper curling over clay walls and creeping between doorways, then grows in strength as boys shuffle to their feet and brush dust off their robes. You blink hard, trying to wake your brain from the verse loop you were just caught in. Musa's still mumbling the last line of Surah al-Mulk, even as he stands. That boy doesn't stop unless someone physically resets him, which, to be fair, has happened. You head toward the courtyard again, your law tucked under one arm, ink smudging your palm like a badge of honor or war, depending on how you're feeling today. The sun is no longer just out. It's fully committed, like a forge, or that one pot of stew from lunch last week that scorched your tongue into a cautionary tale. You stop at the fountain. Again. Another voodoo, another series of practiced movements. By now, your hands almost move on their own, muscle memory guiding you through a ritual older than this very dormitory. And then, lined shoulder to shoulder, you join the others for prayer. Sometimes you forget to appreciate this part. Not the religious obligation necessarily, but the quiet unity of it. 50 boys breathing as one, moving in synchrony, like notes in a song too complex for one voice. After prayer, you trail back to the shade near the western wall of the courtyard. And then it happens. The moment your soul has been waiting for since the sun first climbed into your window. Lunch. Okay, not lunch like you might imagine. No sandwich, no juice box. Just a big shared clay bowl and hands grabbing what they can. Steamed millet again, mashed and sticky, topped with a sauce that probably started its life as okra. Maybe. You don't ask. It's safer not to ask. Everyone sits in tight circles, knees bumping, hands diving in from every angle. You try to stay civil, wait your turn, but one blink too long and Musa's scooped your bite. So you retaliate by taking the peppery corner he was eyeing. Fair is fair. Historians still argue whether meals in these dormitories were cooked by assigned kitchen students, visiting mothers, or hired workers. In your case, it's a mix. The older boys take turns tending the cooking fire, but rumor has it one of the tutors sneaks in extra spice when he thinks no one's watching. You've nicknamed him the Chili Sheikh. He denies everything, but your burning tongue knows the truth. There's also the water jug, passed around with great care. It's clay, shaped like a tear, and always has a faint, earthy taste from the well. Some boys say it makes the water sweeter. Others say it just reminds you that life is 70% mud. Depends on your mood, really. You finish eating, wipe your hands on a scrap of cloth that's seen better days, and lean back against the courtyard wall. Musa sighs deeply beside you. You think we'll get dessert today. You stare at him. There is no dessert. Dessert is a myth whispered by travelers from the coast. Someone further down the line produces a hardened date from inside a cloth pouch. It's dry, probably a week old, but everyone watches like he's unwrapping treasure. He breaks it in half, shares it with the boy beside him, and immediately becomes the most popular human on campus. Generosity is sacred here, even if it tastes like leather. After lunch, things slow down. The courtyard quiets. Some boys stretch out on mats, heads propped on bundled robes. Others pull out their tablets again, tracing old notes with absent fingers. You find yourself somewhere in between, not quite asleep, not quite alert. It's the rest hour. The pause between brain burns. A sacred time of yawning, whispering, and if you're lucky, a nap with your mouth closed. You roll your robe into a pillow and lie back on a sliver of shade. Your thoughts drift. The dormitory hums around you. Insects chatter softly near the well. Someone is humming a tune under his breath. Something about camels and silver and moonlight. You almost laugh, until it pulls you under. Just before sleep grabs you fully, you wonder if scholars 100 years ago lay here like you, eyes closed, stomach just full enough, dreaming in half-memorized verse. Quirky fact, some of the most famous scholars from Timbuktu claimed they could memorize 100 lines of poetry in one sitting, just by hearing them aloud once. You, however, once forgot your own name during an oral quiz and accidentally introduced yourself as Surah An-Nas. The tutor still chuckles when he sees you. The nap doesn't last long. It never does. Too many voices. Too much sun shifting across your legs. And always someone snoring like a hippo with sinus trouble. You open one eye. It's Ahmed, obviously. The dormitory bell rings again, less a bell, more a piece of iron banged against another piece of iron by a boy who thinks he's a drummer in a desert band. But it gets the job done. Groans fill the courtyard. Time to return. Back inside, the room's somehow hotter. The air feels heavier, like it's been chewed by everyone and spat back out. But you sit anyway because this next part, it's not just about Quran. It's law, real law. Fiqh, the sacred rules and interpretations that shape everything from trade to marriage to how long you can borrow your cousin's donkey before it counts as theft. The tutor steps in, carrying a thick bundle of scrolls tied with leather cord. He unrolls one gently, careful not to tear the edges. The ink is faded but legible, black lines dancing across yellowed paper like ants in formation. He begins to read. You follow along, scribbling notes with your reed pen, occasionally stopping to blow dust off the tablet or chase a beetle off your knee. The lesson's hard today, something about water rights and oasis disputes. You try to stay focused, but Musa keeps whispering translations into your ear in the voice of a royal announcer. You jab him with your elbow. He grins. Worth it. Historians still debate whether the curriculum in dormitory madrasas leaned more toward practical civic training or abstract religious theory. Today, it feels like both. One moment you're learning how to divide inheritance between half-siblings and goat debts. The next, you're plunged into divine metaphysics about intention, sin, and whether your prayer counts if your robe is inside out. Answer, only if it's unintentional and the prayer was heartfelt. Still, best not to risk it. Turn that robe around. Eventually, your brain hits that lovely point where nothing makes sense anymore. You've drawn a camel wearing glasses in the corner of your tablet. You have no memory of doing this. And your writing is starting to slant like a cart stuck in the sand. Time for another break. This one's shorter. Just enough to splash water on your face and recite a few lines to your partner without collapsing into giggles. The sun is shifting west, shadows are stretching, and the long, slow breath of evening is just beginning. But there's still one more session before sunset. You rub your temples and head back inside. The day's not over yet. By now, the study room has that overbaked, afternoon mustiness that clings to walls and skin like a damp wool blanket left out in the sun. You sit again on the mat that knows your spine better than your own bed does, staring at your law as if maybe, just maybe, the words will leap into your brain out of sheer pity. Spoiler, they won't. But you whisper them anyway. This last session is different. It's not about memorizing or reciting. It's about discussion, application, stretching the verses and laws into the shape of daily life, like dough pulled across a hot pan. The tutor leans forward now, no longer reading, just speaking. You listen closer, partly because his tone shifts, and partly because his stories sometimes involve jackals and dishonest merchants. And let's face it, that's your kind of plot twist. He opens with a question. If a man loans his friend a camel for 3 days, but the friend loses it in a sandstorm on the second day, who is responsible? You blink. The room goes silent, then explodes with overlapping guesses. The borrower. No, the wind. The camel. That last one was Musa. He's clearly unraveling again. The tutor raises a hand. And what if the camel was borrowed in return for a favor, not money? Now it gets spicy. This is how the evening sessions go. Less reading, more debate. Your tutor was trained under a famous jurist from Jenne, and he prides himself on teaching through logic and analogy. He once argued that a broken water jug could teach you everything you needed to know about divine justice. You didn't entirely follow the argument, but it was definitely the most theological anyone's ever been about pottery. Historians still argue whether juristic reasoning in 15th century. Mali leaned more on Maghribi principles or localized Sahelian interpretations. You mostly argue whether your answer will get you smacked with the tutor's palm fan. Which, let's be clear, hurts more emotionally than physically. It's the sound, like being rejected by a thundercloud. Your group breaks into pairs again for mock rulings. You and Ahmed are assigned a dispute about a date thief caught climbing a neighbor's tree. The neighbor threw a stone at him and knocked him into a donkey trough. So now the thief has bruised pride, wet robes, and is claiming moral injury. Ahmed says, cut off one hand and give him a towel. You say, just make him replant a date sapling. You argue he gestures wildly. You draw a tiny palm tree on your tablet and label it justice. The tutor chuckles and picks neither of you. He goes with Musa's ruling, public apology, and 3 days of tending the neighbor's goats. Creative, and somehow more humiliating than a fine. You make a mental note not to steal dates. These little court dramas go on until the sun starts to dip behind the compound walls. That golden hour spills into the room and everything turns soft. Even the buzzing flies seem to calm down, resting on cracked windowsills like they're tired of being annoying. You stretch your back, feel your joints pop like old oil jars, and breathe deep. Evening prayer is coming. But before it does, there's just enough time for one last group reading. The tutor selects a passage, something short, poetic, something meant to stick to the mind like honey on a spoon. Tonight it's a verse about intention, how all acts are judged by the hearts behind them. He reads it slowly. You repeat it. He reads it again, this time with pauses for breath. Then silence. No one speaks for a moment afterward. The room feels aligned, just a bit, like you're all sharing a thought for once instead of just a space. Quirky fact, in some dormitories across Mali, students were encouraged to write their favorite hadiths or poetic wisdoms on the walls in charcoal during their last year. Your wall is still blank, but you've already decided what you'll write one day. Something short, something about silence and stolen millet cakes. You haven't figured it out yet. Outside, the call to prayer lifts again. You all rise like waves in a line, no talking, no rush. Just sandals on stone and robes brushing past door frames. Evening prayer is longer, more deliberate. The light is softer. There's a breeze now, pushing through the courtyard with the smell of dry grass and someone's burned stew from a neighboring home. You don't mind. It smells like a story. Afterward, no one returns to study immediately. This is the social hour, the soft, dusky bridge between day and night. Some boys stay in the courtyard, talking in low voices, trading rumors about merchant caravans or strange sights on the riverbanks. Others sit on the roof to watch the last slices of sunlight vanish. You join Musa and a few others by the outer wall. Someone pulls out a stringed instrument, a ngoni with a cracked body and 3 intact strings. He starts to pluck. Simple melodies, no lyrics, just something to fill the air. Do you think the scholars ever danced? You ask. Musa grins. Probably just when their manuscripts didn't get eaten by termites. Fair point. You sway gently anyway, not quite dancing. Just letting your head nod with the rhythm. It feels like the right thing to do. Historians still debate how much music and art were allowed in religious schools like yours. Some say instruments were banned. Others say they were encouraged as long as the songs were moral and the drums didn't summon jinn. You try not to summon jinn in general. That's a good rule for life. Eventually, the music fades. The stars begin to prick the sky open one by one. A few boys point out constellations, but no one agrees on their names. One says the cluster near the horizon looks like the prophet's sandals. Another says it's clearly a goat being chased by a lion. You see a bowl of millet with a spoon stuck in it. Everyone laughs. You wander toward the wash area again, splash your face, and prepare for the short final prayer of the night. There's still more to do. One last review session under lantern light. But for now, the world feels softer, like the day has finally exhaled. And so have you. You shuffle back toward the study hall under a sky that's deepening into ink. The stars above twinkle like they are in on some joke that hasn't reached you yet. Someone's already lit the oil lanterns, and their soft glow spills out through the doorways like a secret too warm to keep inside. Moths flit lazily around the flames, circling like students orbiting their tutor's approval. You swipe one away from your forehead. Rude. Inside, the air smells of lamp smoke and ink. Familiar, heavy, comforting in its own slightly flammable way. You find your mat, you find your tablet, you find your posture, which by now resembles a melted marionette. This is the final review, the nightcap for your intellect. Just one more round of recitation and reflection before sleep claims the dormitory like a sandstorm sneaking in under the door. The tutor tonight isn't the usual one. It's Sheikh Umar, the older scholar with the voice that sounds like a cracked drum and the face that could win a staring contest with a tree. He carries a small manuscript bound in goatskin, and he doesn't sit. He perches like a hawk watching for laziness. "Open your ears wider than your mouths," he says, with the kind of grin that dares you to test him. You do not test him. Tonight's topic is less about memorization and more about worldview. He reads from a collection of sayings by earlier Malian scholars. Their names fall like rain on a tin roof. Al-Kunti, al-Bakri, Akit the Elder. Men whose writings crossed deserts on camelback, who had debates under moonlight that still ripple through the margins of scrolls today. Knowledge, Sheikh Umar says slowly, is not what rests in your tablet. It's what follows you when the tablet burns. That one lands. Everyone goes quiet for a beat. Even Musa stops doodling on his sandal with charcoal. You repeat it to yourself, and again. There's something about the night that makes truth stick more deeply, like ink setting into cloth. Quirky fact, some students in Timbuktu would deliberately sleep with their tablets under their pillows, hoping divine. Understanding would seep in while they snored. You tried that once. You woke up with an ink-stained ear and zero enlightenment. Worth a shot, though. The session continues. This time, Sheikh Umar asks questions, but not the kind you can answer with a verse or a legal ruling. He asks what wisdom means to you, whether justice always looks the same, whether a thief can still be a teacher, and whether a teacher who forgets his place becomes the student. Your brain starts to warm again like an old pot over glowing coals. You offer a thought here, a hesitating word there. You don't get laughed at. You don't get a nod either. Just a quiet from the sheikh, which might be better than a gold coin. Or might mean he thinks you've confused a parable with a proverb again. It's happened. Don't bring up the mango tree metaphor incident. Historians still argue whether the dormitory systems in Timbuktu and beyond were meant to create pious jurists or community leaders. You're starting to suspect it was both, or neither. Maybe it was just about giving you the tools to look at the world with sharper eyes, even if those eyes are currently struggling to stay open. After the lesson ends, Sheikh Umar closes the manuscript and stands in silence for a long moment. Then he says, "You've done enough for today. Now let your thoughts rest so they may wake stronger." With that, he leaves, just vanishes into the night like a scholarly ghost. You check to see if he took the lantern with him. He didn't, but he might have taken part of your soul. Hard to say. It's officially bedtime now. The dormitory shifts into wind-down mode. Robes rustle. Feet drag. Voices drop into that whispery register that only happens when brains are too tired to argue. You retreat to your corner of the sleeping area. There are no beds. Just woven mats, blankets, and the occasional stuffed pillow someone smuggled from home months ago and guards like a crown jewel. Your mat is thin, but it's yours. It smells faintly of palm oil, dust, and achievement. You lay out your robe to air it for the night. Someone across the room is humming again. This time, it's a lullaby, soft, wordless. You catch your breath as the melody curls around your ribcage and settles there like a cat getting comfortable. Before you lie down, you rinse your face one last time. The water is cool. The jug is nearly empty. Someone probably forgot to refill it, but you're too tired to care. You splash, you breathe, you blink slowly. Then return to your mat. You lie flat and stare at the rafters. The roof is made of packed earth and wooden beams. At night, it feels like a sky you can touch or fall into. Your thoughts start to slip sideways. You think about camels again. About Musa's ridiculous ruling earlier. About the verse from tonight. What follows you when the tablet burns? You whisper it once more, just to keep it. You hear Ahmed snore across the room. A gentle, wheezy kind of snore. Not like Musa's snore, which sounds like a dying goat mixed with sandpaper. You think about shoving him. You don't. Spiritual maturity achieved. Quirky detail. Some dormitory boys claim you can control your dreams if you recite a line of poetry before falling asleep. You try it. A line from your favorite Sufi poem, something about the moon hiding in a teacup. Makes no sense, but that's poetry for you. Outside, the city hums low. A few last footsteps. The creak of a cartwheel. The clink of a distant bowl. Life doesn't stop, but it does get quieter. The dormitory joins the rhythm. Sleep, recite. Sleep, rise. Like breath. Like waves on dry land. You pull your blanket over your shoulder and close your eyes. A warm breeze sneaks through the crack in the wall and kisses your cheek. You smile, just a little, and let the day dissolve. You wake before the sun, not because you're virtuous, because someone kicks you. Right in the hip bone, it's Musa. Of course it's Musa. Time, he mutters, already halfway to the washroom. You groan, roll over, try bargaining with the void. It doesn't work. The floor's still hard, your eyelids are still made of clay, and somewhere a rooster is crowing with the arrogance of a nobleman who's never taken an exam. You sit up, blink, grope around for your sandals. Why do they always migrate at night? You find one by your mat and the other under Ahmed, who's still dreaming of something that makes him smile in his sleep. Lucky. The dormitory begins its morning stretch. Boys yawning like lions. Robes rustling. Soft grunts of resistance as minds re-enter their bodies. And the ritual of cold water to the face. You splash yours at the wash basin and briefly question all your life choices. But hey, at least you're not a bricklayer. There's no breakfast yet. That comes after prayer and first recitation. So your stomach growls like a discontent goat, but it'll have to wait. You line up barefoot in the courtyard with the others. It's still dark, but the sky is bruising pink at the edges. The kind of color that makes you think of both miracles and papaya peel. The call to prayer rises, and your day properly begins. Afterward, the tutor calls for review. You return to the main hall, hair still damp, eyes barely open. But your law waits for you. It always does. The dried ink on the wood feels like an old friend you're both tired of and comforted by. This morning is all about review. Strict, repetitive, and somehow louder than it needs to be. Each boy reciting, overlapping voices in a minor key chorus of divine phrases and misremembered endings. The tutor paces, corrects, doesn't yell, but lets disappointment hang in the air like sour milk. You're up next. Your portion includes a difficult chain of hadiths, names stacked like dominoes. Al-Zuri from Urwa from Aisha from the Prophet, may peace be upon him. You mess up the order once, then again, then manage it with your eyes shut. The tutor nods. Approval, sort of. Hard to tell. He once praised a student by frowning slightly less than usual. Mainstream historical fact. Many Malian madrasas followed the Maliki school of Islamic law, which emphasized community consensus and practical rulings. You're reminded of that every time a debate breaks out about whether spitting near the well is sinful or just gross. Spoiler, it's both. By mid-morning, the air has shifted. The heat's crept in. Someone fans themselves with their law. You resist. Barely. Then the magic moment arrives. Breakfast. Today it's moni, a thin millet porridge with a bit of tamarind if you're lucky and slightly burnt crust if you're not. You are not lucky today. You stir it anyway, grateful just to be chewing something that isn't sand or your own despair. Ahmed complains that the spoon tastes like metal. You remind him it is metal. He grunts in betrayal. You eat sitting cross-legged with the others, bowls in laps, eyes half closed. The sun peeks in now. There's light catching the dust in midair like tiny golden spirits. You stretch your neck and feel something crack, possibly your will to live. Musa drops a date into your bowl. You nod in thanks. He nods back like he just handed over the crown of Songhai. After breakfast, it's cleaning hour. Yes, cleaning hour. No, you don't get a choice. Each student is assigned a chore. You're on courtyard sweeping today, which sounds serene until you remember that dust is basically the national flower and it multiplies like gossip. You grab your bundle of dried grass bristles and begin. It's meditative. Sort of. If meditation includes sweating and muttering under your breath about wind direction. You sweep between the study benches. You sweep around the prayer platform. You even sweep a dead cricket under a bush, whispering a quick inna lillahi just in case. Ahmed passes you with a bucket, headed for the latrine trench. He looks like a tragic poem. You both lock eyes in solidarity, then keep going. After cleaning, you gather for the midday lesson. It's not religious today, it's geography. Yes, geography, with a tutor who once traveled all the way to the edge of the desert and back. He says he saw a town where people eat snakes and drink saltwater tea. You're not sure if he's exaggerating or underselling it. He draws a crude map in the dust with a stick. Mali here, Sijil Masa up here, Tadmeka east. This, he adds, circling dramatically, is where sand eats donkeys. You raise your hand. Do the donkeys taste it? He stares at you, then keeps drawing. Okay, historians still argue whether Mali's scholars had access to detailed maps or relied more on oral direction systems and trade routes memorized like poems. You know that some traders swear by stars, others by termite mounds. You wouldn't trust either after dark. The lesson drifts toward the fantastical, as many geography lessons do. He speaks of the Nile, the Zanj coast, and a mountain shaped like a crouching lion. Some boys begin sketching maps in the dust. You try one, but it ends up looking like a deformed chicken. You label it Cairo and move on. The bell for rest rings, or rather someone hits a hanging piece of metal with a stick. Same effect. You return to the shade of the dormitory and lie down for the kailula, the midday rest. Not a nap exactly, more like sanctioned collapsing. You stretch out again. The floor is still warm from sunlight, but cool enough to lull you. You fold your arm under your head and close your eyes. Someone hums that same wordless tune again. Or maybe it's just your brain recycling yesterday's dreams. You drift, but you don't quite sleep. Instead, your thoughts skim across the morning like a dragonfly over water. The chain of hadiths, the burnt millet, the geography of imaginary snakes. It all blurs into the gentle hum of another day in a life built around repetition, reflection, and the occasional cricket funeral. Somewhere, a goat bleats in complaint, probably about the heat. You understand. You'd complain too. But you've got another recitation session soon, and your mouth is saving its energy. You roll over just once, and let the floor cradle you like it's the only honest thing in the world. The midday haze curls in like a sleepy cat, stretching its warm belly across the courtyard and seeping into every stone, every mat, every crease of your robe. You stir from your not-quite-sleep, sticky with heat and the dull ache of interrupted rest. The call to regroup rises, not loud, just a name or two whispered by the duty boy, then passed along like a dry leaf in the wind. Time to return. Someone mutters as if that explains anything. And somehow it does. You gather yourself, brush dust from your elbow, and shuffle barefoot toward the main study hall. Today's post-stressed session is fiqh, Islamic jurisprudence, and you can already feel the gears in your brain protesting. Not because it's boring, because it's detailed, sharp-edged. A maze of ifs and buts and except whens that makes your mind feel like it's chasing chickens blindfolded. The tutor today is Sidi Bakayoko, a man with a voice like dry wood snapping and an unshakable love for analogies involving goats. If a man lends a goat on a Tuesday and the goat delivers twins on a Wednesday, but the owner was asleep through both days, who owns the milk by Thursday? You stare blankly. Your mouth opens, closes. The boy next to you whispers, "The milk belongs to the goat." You nod solemnly. That feels safe. Mainstream historical fact. Students at Sankore and other madrasas spent years studying jurisprudence texts like the Mukhtasar of Khalil, digesting thick volumes of legal thought through oral commentary, debates, and mnemonic devices. You once tried to memorize a ruling using a song about fish. You don't eat fish anymore. Too many memories. As the lesson unfolds, you take notes, not on paper, because that's rare and expensive, but on your wooden tablet, carefully wiping older verses off with a sponge dipped in sanded water and scraping fresh lines in with charcoal ink. The smell of the ink has become a part of your body. You suspect if someone squeezed your arm, a proverb might come out. City Bakayoko leans on a staff as he speaks. He doesn't need it to stand. It's more of a punctuation tool, thudding into the floor at every dramatic turn of legal phrase. He is a performer as much as a scholar. He quotes scholars like they are cousins, and he'll pause mid-sentence just to raise an eyebrow, daring you to ask what happens if you feed a borrowed sheep figs during drought season. The answer, apparently, depends on the owner's intentions and whether the figs were ripe. Of course it does. Historians still argue whether the high complexity of legal education in Mali was meant to empower local governance or serve elite scholarly circles alone. You suspect the answer changes depending on who's asking. Your tutor claims it's about moral clarity. Musa says it's about knowing how to argue without getting hit. You lean somewhere in the middle. By the end of the session, your hand is stained black, your jaw sore from clenching in concentration, and your brain sizzling like millet at noon. City dismisses you all with a question no one answers. He smiles. That's the trap. Answer, and you get an hour of side commentary. Stay quiet, and he tells you you're wise beyond your years. No one wins. No one loses. You leave grateful just to be horizontal again. But no rest yet, because now comes peer review. Ah yes, the gentle art of being judged by your equals. You gather in smaller circles. Each boy recites his portion of the lesson. Others comment, correct, or smirk behind their teeth. Sometimes someone breaks into a passionate defense of their interpretation, and the whole group devolves into whispers, shoulder nudges, and raised fingers. You manage to hold your own. Just barely. Ahmed throws you a helpful glance. Musa throws you a mango pit. You take both as signs of approval. Quirky fact, some dormitory groups used coded gestures during peer review to signal when a student was being too long-winded, too vague, or just plain wrong. You spot a few today. A subtle scratch behind the ear, a slow blink, someone rubbing their nose vigorously. Apparently that means we've heard this part before. You make a mental note not to talk about sheep loans again. After peer review, the energy dips again. Students scatter, some to nap again, some to scribble notes, some to sneak off toward the well in hopes of catching a cool splash before the next session. You opt for shade. You sit under the neem tree near the southern wall, where the breeze, if you beg politely enough, might pass through once or twice an hour. You nibble on a leftover date. Drink a mouthful of water from your skin flask. Watch the dust whirl across the courtyard like tiny dancers auditioning for a storm. You think about the law again, how precise it all is, how fragile, and how so much of it depends on memory. Your memory, your voice, your heart trying to hold it all together with no glue but habit. From behind the neem tree comes the whisper of poetry. Someone's reciting verses in Songhai. Not legal, not required, just something from home. The kind of poem your grandmother used to hum when grinding millet. It rises and falls like the breeze, not meant to be analyzed, just remembered. You let it settle into your bones. Evening begins to arrive in fragments, a longer shadow here, a sudden yawn there. The shifting light makes everything look like a painting done in brown and gold. You stand slowly, joints complaining like old merchants, and start to make your way back toward the dormitory. There's one more session today. One more stretch of your mind before it finally goes soft like cooked yam. But for now, you just walk, not fast, not slow. Just enough to feel the day begin to stretch toward its close, like a scroll that's almost entirely read. And yet somehow always has more written on the back. You step back into the study hall just as the shadows begin crawling their way up the mud brick walls. The room is already half full, boys resettling on mats, fidgeting, stretching, scratching their scalps like philosophers with lice problems. Evening session is known to either make or break your day. It's review heavy. No new material, no elegant analogies about goats or mango pits, just pure, brute repetition. The academic equivalent of chewing sugarcane until your jaw goes numb. You settle in with your law, knees crossed, your charcoal ink refreshed with a drop of tamarind water. Today's section, the purification laws. You already know the joke's coming. Someone always snickers when the tutor says najasa, the word for impurity. And someone else always groans when the part about if a lizard falls in your ablution bucket comes up. Mainstream historical fact. Across the Islamic world in the 15th century, including Mali, cleanliness was not just religious but deeply cultural. Washing, scrubbing, brushing with meswak twigs. These weren't just obligations, they were woven into identity. You remember your tutor once said, "Cleanliness is half of faith. The other half is remembering where you left your sandals." He might have been joking, unclear. You begin reciting your passage quietly, mouthing the phrases. As your fingers glide over the grooves of the wooden board, the sound of rustling robes and whispered Arabic fills the air like 100 tiny rivers murmuring through the same canyon. You trip over a passage about water quantity thresholds, whether something still counts as clean if a frog's been swimming in it for more than 20 seconds. Musa mutters behind you, "Frogs are pure, unless they vote." You don't laugh out loud. Barely. The tutor walks slowly behind the rows. No cane, just that look. The kind that can see right through sloppy memorization like it's wet fabric. He stops behind a boy who's clearly bluffing his way through the chapter on menstrual law and its ritual implications. The boy says, "Ma afhamu," "I don't understand." The tutor sighs, as though this is both a disappointment and deeply expected. He gestures for him to start over, slower. The boy does. Historians still argue whether dormitory-based Islamic schooling in Mali emphasized understanding or sheer memorization. From your spot on the mat, it feels like the answer is both. You're told to know, but also to feel. To remember with your heart, not just your tongue. Which is a lovely sentiment until you mix up two nearly identical hadiths and feel your stomach collapse like a deflated water skin. The final recitations continue for nearly an hour. Then, finally, the tutor claps twice. The sound cuts the room like lightning. That's the signal. Finished. Books away. Or rather, tablets rinsed and laid flat to dry. You rinse your board at the washing trench, using leftover tea water because someone else took the fresh basin. The wood smells faintly of soot and your fingers are sticky from the ink. You glance down at your robe. Ink smudges. Dust, the ghost of breakfast millet. You look like someone who wrestled a calligraphy demon and lost. Still, there's pride in it. You're part of something ancient. larger than the dorm walls or the buzzing night. You're studying what generations before you have preserved like precious cloths. Text by text, breath by breath. Now the sun is truly gone. The sky turns from bronze to indigo. The mosque's tower flickers with the lamplight of the muezzin preparing for the final call. You drift toward the dormitory. The walk is slower now. Everything's slower. The dust is cooler underfoot. The air finally breathable. Your limbs aching in that oddly satisfying way that comes from using your brain all day and somehow surviving. Inside the dorm, the oil lamp burns low in the corner, its smoke curling toward the ceiling like it's trying to find a dream to nestle in. The boys are already spreading mats, shifting sandals, and negotiating who gets which corner. You claim your usual spot by the crack in the wall. Yes, it lets in a breeze. Yes, it also lets in spiders. But you've learned to live with both. A metaphor, probably. Dinner arrives with the usual whisper of sandals scraping on stone. It's toe, a thick millet dough with baobab leaf sauce and a smattering of dried fish crumbs. Ahmed makes a face. You remind him it's better than boiled termites. He reminds you that boiled termites are a delicacy where he's from. You apologize to all termites, living or steamed. You eat slowly, savoring the mix of sour and bitter, the hint of smoke from the clay pot, and that comforting texture only millet can provide, a cross between pudding and responsibility. You share the bowl with 3 others, passing it without words, everyone understanding the rhythm. Eat, pass, nod, repeat. That's dinner conversation here. Quirky fact, some dormitory students believed chewing each bite exactly 33 times brought spiritual clarity. Others believed it just made you last in line for seconds. You chew respectfully but don't count. Your spirit seems clear enough for now. After dinner comes a brief moment of freedom. That strange, sacred pocket between required study and mandatory sleep. Some boys slip outside. Some stretch. One attempts to beatbox with his teeth and fails spectacularly. You just lie back, hands behind your head, and listen to the night breathing. Crickets drone in waves. A dog barks in the distance, then again, less confidently. Someone's humming a tune that sounds older than language. The stars blink above like lazy scholars grading your day's work from a distance. Then, slowly, the dormitory begins its descent into silence. Boys curl into robes. Chatter dies down. Only the occasional cough or dream mumble remains. You stay awake a bit longer, watching the shadows move. Letting the day replay itself behind your eyes like a slow chant. And even though your muscles are sore, your mind overstuffed, your mat thin and slightly damp, you feel something settle in your chest. Not comfort exactly, not joy, but a kind of purposeful fatigue. Like your whole being just took another step towards something vast, unknowable, and deeply human. You let your eyes close one at a time, and somewhere between thought and sleep, you murmur a verse you barely knew this morning. Now it's yours, not because you understand every word, but because it survived inside you. And that, here in the dormitory's hush, is what counts most. The night deepens and you wake to the soft rustling of robes and murmured prayers. Someone shifts beside you, a whispered name calling you back to consciousness. It's time for tahajjud, the night prayer. You blink against the darkness, stretch your cramped limbs, and gather your senses. This part of the day is special, quiet, still. The world outside the dormitory is asleep, but here, In this humble room, devotion burns bright. You follow the others out, bare feet touching the cool earth as the moon hangs heavy and round. The prayer space is simple, a cleared patch of courtyard, a worn mat, and a single lantern casting long shadows. You kneel, bow, and rise, the motions familiar and comforting. The Arabic verses flow from your lips, mingling with the night breeze and the distant calls of owls. Mainstream historical fact. The practice of tahajjud is rooted in the Prophet Muhammad's tradition, emphasizing personal connection with God through voluntary late-night prayers. Here in Mali, this spiritual discipline blends seamlessly with the rhythms of daily life, offering moments of quiet clarity amid rigorous study. As you finish, a few boys linger, whispering about dreams. Dreams of journeys to distant lands, dreams of future debates in great cities like Timbuktu or Cairo. You listen, half awake, imagining yourself standing before a crowd reciting verses with perfect clarity. You probably won't survive this fantasy without tripping over your own words, but it's nice to dream. Scholars still debate how much these late-night rituals shaped the personal identities of students' verses, reinforcing communal bonds. You think it's both, personal and shared, like a secret handshake passed through generations. The night stretches on. You return to your mat. Sleep arrives slowly, filled with fragments of lessons, goat analogies, and whispered verses. Morning comes quietly, like a shy guest peeking through the cracks of the dormitory walls. You awaken to the soft chatter of boys rubbing sleep from their eyes, the faint clatter of water pots, and the distant bleat of a goat or two. The smell of warm millet porridge floats in on the breeze, mixed with dust and the earthy scent of sun-warmed clay. You stretch out the stiffness in your limbs, feeling the residual weariness from yesterday's long study sessions still settled in your bones. The routine begins anew. Morning prayers, ablutions at the courtyard well, and the shuffle of sandals on packed earth as everyone prepares for another day. Breakfast is simple but filling. Millet porridge sweetened with a drizzle of honey or fresh fruit when available. You share your portion with a younger boy who's still struggling to get the chant of Bismillah right. His wide eyes meet yours, full of determination and just a hint of fear. You offer a quiet nod of encouragement. Mainstream historical fact. In 15th century Mali, meals at schools were communal and humble, often prepared by the older students or local women who lived nearby. Food was both sustenance and a way to reinforce the sense of community among students from diverse backgrounds. As the morning sun climbs higher, lessons resume. Today, it's poetry. Not just any poetry, but the ancient verses of the Ajami tradition, Arabic script used to write local languages like Bambara and Songhai. You run your fingers over the calligraphy, the shapes strange but beautiful. Each word feels like a puzzle piece connecting your heritage with the wider Islamic world. Quirky fact. Some students believed that mastering Ajami poetry could unlock secret wisdom hidden in the letters themselves. You suspect it's more about pride than magic, but who's to say for sure? You recite lines from memory, trying to capture the rhythm and emotion. Sometimes you stumble, and the room fills with quiet chuckles. City Bakayoko smiles knowingly. No shame in falling off the camel's back, he says. Historians still argue whether Ajami script was primarily a tool of resistance or cultural preservation in West African Islamic societies. You lean toward cultural preservation. After all, you're living proof of its power to connect past and present. As the lesson ends, you step outside. The courtyard is alive with the sound of children playing, elders chatting, and the occasional call to prayer echoing from the minaret. You take a deep breath, the sun warming your face. Another day in the dormitory awaits, filled with challenges and small victories alike. Morning arrives with a slow, golden creep, slipping through the cracks in the mud brick walls and warming your face like a gentle hand. You awaken to the low murmur of whispered prayers, the rustle of worn robes, and the faint clink of wooden water jugs being passed carefully around the dormitory. Your body protests the change from sleep to wakefulness, limbs stiff, muscles aching from yesterday's relentless mental workout. But there's no room for dawdling in the life of a student here. The air is heavy with dust and the sweet scent of drying millet, mingled with the faint smokiness of last night's lamp oil. You swing your legs over the edge of your sleeping mat, feet touching the cool, packed earth floor. A brief moment of gratitude for the cool morning air before the day's rhythm pulls you forward. Around you, the dormitory slowly stirs to life. Older boys chant quietly to themselves as they prepare for the morning prayers, their voices soft but steady like a steady river. You hear the occasional cough, the scrape of sandals, and the distant bleating of a goat tethered somewhere near the courtyard. This is the world you know, the ordered chaos of learning and living, wrapped in the warm embrace of tradition. You make your way to the ablution basin, where a line of boys waits patiently for their turn to wash away the dust and sleep. The water is cool and clear, a precious gift in this arid land. You cup it in your hands, splash it on your face, and feel a flicker of refreshment that spreads from your skin to your spirit. The ritual cleanses not just your body, but sharpens your mind, preparing you for the day ahead. Mainstream historical fact. In 15th century Mali, ablution was a fundamental part of daily routine in Islamic education, symbolizing both physical and spiritual purification. Students took great care in performing these rites, often under the watchful eyes of senior scholars, emphasizing discipline and reverence. Breakfast follows swiftly, a communal meal of thick millet porridge sweetened with honey when available, served in large clay bowls shared among the students. You sit cross-legged on the ground, sharing the meal with your peers, the silence broken only by the occasional spoon clinking and quiet murmurs of gratitude. The porridge is warm and filling, a necessary fuel for the long hours of study to come. You catch the eye of a younger boy struggling to correctly pronounce the opening phrase of today's lesson. His lips tremble slightly as he tries again. You lean over and whisper an encouraging word in Bambara. His eyes light up with a shy smile. Small moments like this remind you why you endure the rigor of this life. The morning lesson begins with the study of Ajami poetry, local languages written in Arabic script. You trace the delicate curves and lines of the letters, feeling the connection between your people and the wider Islamic world. The poems speak of history, faith, and the beauty of language. You recite the verses aloud, savoring the rhythm and melody as the words roll off your tongue. Quirky fact: some students believe that reciting Ajami poetry at dawn can ward off evil spirits and bring blessings to the day. Whether true or not, you appreciate the comfort it brings. City Bakayoko listens closely, nodding approvingly at the effort. He reminds you that poetry is not just about memorization, but about feeling the spirit behind the words. You try to internalize that as you prepare for the next lesson. Historians still debate whether Ajami script was primarily a form of resistance against colonial pressures, or a means of preserving indigenous culture within Islamic education. You think it's both, and that's why you cherish it so much. It's a bridge between worlds, a testament to the resilience of your heritage. As the sun climbs higher, the courtyard buzzes with life. You hear the laughter of children playing, the call to prayer echoing from the nearby mosque, and the soft rustle of palm fronds swaying in the breeze. You pause for a moment, letting the sounds wash over you. Despite the challenges, despite the hardships, this place feels like home. Lessons continue, weaving through theology, poetry, and law. Your mind races to keep up, occasionally tripping over unfamiliar words or complex concepts. But each stumble is met with patient correction, encouragement, and the quiet camaraderie of your fellow students. You recall the goat analogy from yesterday and chuckle softly to yourself. Sometimes you think learning here is less about the answers and more about the questions. As the morning session winds down, you take a moment to rest under the neem tree. The shade offers relief from the growing heat, and you close your eyes, letting the hum of life around you lull your thoughts. The dust motes dance in the sunlight, tiny golden spirits carrying the stories of generations past. You open your eyes, feeling the steady pull of the day ahead. Another chapter awaits, another challenge. But for now, you breathe in the moment, knowing that each step you take is part of a long and storied journey. You return to your mat with a slow, steady rhythm, the midday heat pressing against the walls like a heavy hand. The air inside the dormitory is thick with dust and the faint scent of drying ink. The wooden tablets lay scattered, some inscribed with neat lines of script, others smeared where the ink has faded or been hastily wiped away. You feel the weight of the day settling deep into your bones as you prepare for the next round of lessons. This session focuses on fiqh, the Islamic jurisprudence that governs daily life. You brace yourself. It's a dense subject, full of rules and exceptions that twist and turn like the roots of the baobab tree. The tutor's voice cuts through the quiet, clear, and unyielding. You listen, trying to grasp the fine line between what's obligatory and what's merely recommended. Mainstream historical fact. In 15th century Mali, fiqh was a crucial part of Islamic education, guiding not just religious practice but social and legal norms within the community. Students studied texts like the Muwatta of Imam Malik, blending local customs with broader Islamic principles. You take notes in charcoal on your tablet, fingers smudged with ink. Each rule feels like a small puzzle piece, sometimes fitting neatly, other times threatening to fall apart. You recall an odd detail your tutor mentioned once. In some villages, the verdict on whether a tree was considered public or private property could hinge on whether a bird nested there. The world of law is stranger than it seems. Quirky fact, some students believed that if you recited certain fiqh rulings backwards, it could protect you from bad luck. You try it quietly under your breath. Nothing happens. At least, not yet. The debate among scholars is still alive, centuries later, about how Malian Islamic law adapted to the complex tapestry of indigenous traditions. Did it conquer local customs or weave itself gently into them? You see traces of both. Sometimes the rules feel like rigid walls. Other times, like flexible threads holding a community's fabric together. You notice Musa beside you, fidgeting with his pen. He whispers about a dispute over inheritance laws in his village, tangled and confusing like a thicket of thorn bushes. You exchange a glance, both silently acknowledging the complexity of justice and mercy. The afternoon light slants sharply through the dormitory's small window. Dust dances in the beams like tiny spirits caught in a sunbeam. The tutor calls for a break. You stretch, aching in places you didn't know could ache. Outside, the courtyard hums with life. Children running, women chatting while preparing the evening meal. You steal a moment to breathe the warm air, feeling the pulse of the world beyond the classroom. You watch a group of boys playing a game with stones, their laughter ringing bright and clear. For a moment, the weight of law and learning lifts. Back inside, the final part of the session focuses on the poetry of law, the beautiful rhythmic verses that help memorization. You recite with the others, voice blending into the chorus of young scholars. The words flow over you like a river, sometimes smooth, sometimes turbulent. As the lesson ends, the tutor reminds you all that knowledge is not just for the mind, but for the heart and community. You pack your tablet carefully, ready to face whatever the evening brings. Historians still argue whether the Malian madrasa system emphasized rote memorization or encouraged critical thinking. From your experience, it's a bit of both, discipline and curiosity locked in a delicate dance. You step outside as the sun begins to dip, the sky painted with shades of amber and violet. The day's heat fades, replaced by a cooler breeze. You feel tired but alive, part of something ancient and ongoing. The dormitory doors close behind you with a soft thud. Night approaches, and with it, the promise of rest. The evening settles over the dormitory like a comforting blanket. You find yourself drawn outside, where the air is cooler and carries the faint scent of freshly harvested millet. The sun dips low, casting long shadows that stretch lazily across the courtyard. You lean against the rough mud brick wall, watching as other students gather in small groups, their faces animated with laughter and stories. Dinner is a communal affair, usually a simple stew of beans, onions, and sometimes a handful of okra simmered over a small fire. The aroma wraps around you like an old friend. You sit cross-legged with your peers, dipping handfuls of flatbread into the thick, spicy broth. The warmth spreads through you, chasing away the fatigue of the day. Mainstream historical fact: communal meals were a vital part of the madrasa experience in 15th century Mali, strengthening bonds and teaching students the importance of sharing and humility. Even with limited resources, the community found ways to nurture both body and spirit. As the meal winds down, elders from the nearby village come to visit. They bring stories of distant lands and ancient heroes, their voices weaving a tapestry of history and myth. You listen, captivated by tales of Sundiata Keita and the legendary empire he built. Their words remind you that you are part of a living story, one that stretches far beyond these walls. Quirky fact: some say that the spirits of past scholars linger near the old baobab tree, listening and sometimes whispering advice to those who will listen. You glance at the tree, silhouetted against the night sky, and wonder if you might hear a whisper yourself. The group settles into a rhythm of storytelling, punctuated by laughter and occasional sighs of wonder. You feel the weight of history pressing gently against your shoulders, a reminder of your role as both student and keeper of knowledge. As the stars emerge, pinpricks of light in the vast African sky, you prepare for the evening prayer. The call echoes softly from the minaret, a beacon in the quiet night. Historians still debate how much oral storytelling shaped the education of students compared to formal texts and lectures. From what you experience, it's clear both were crucial: words on a page and words spoken under the stars. After prayer, the dormitory quiets. You lie back on your mat, the cool night air brushing your skin. Your mind drifts, filled with images of distant kingdoms, poetic verses, and the soft murmur of voices long gone but never forgotten. Sleep comes slowly, cradled by the sounds and stories of the night. The first light of dawn creeps quietly into the dormitory, brushing your face with gentle fingers. You stir slowly, the remnants of dreams fading like mist. Outside, the air is cool and fresh, carrying the faint scent of earth and flowering shrubs. You sit up, rubbing sleep from your eyes, feeling the familiar pull of routine and purpose. Today is special. It's the day for public recitations, a chance to demonstrate what you've learned. The courtyard is already buzzing with activity as students prepare, their nerves and excitement weaving through the air like a lively breeze. You adjust your robe, smooth your hair, and practice your verses quietly under your breath. Mainstream historical fact: public recitations were an important tradition in Malian Islamic schools, serving both as a test of knowledge and a way to build communal pride and respect. Students would gather to recite Quranic passages, poetry, and legal rulings in front of elders and visitors. You find yourself standing before the crowd, the heat of their gaze both intimidating and motivating. Your voice starts shaky but grows stronger as you speak, the words unfolding with rhythm and meaning. Each syllable is a step on a path that connects you to centuries of scholars before you. Quirky fact: some students believed that reciting perfectly could bring good luck for the coming year, while mistakes might summon the frown of the school's spirit guardian, a playful superstition that keeps nerves sharp. You glance toward the baobab tree where older boys whisper about the spirit guardian's last mischief. As you finish, applause and murmurs ripple through the crowd. Your heart pounds, and a quiet pride settles deep in your chest. Historians still argue how much these public performances influenced the development of oral verses written traditions in West African Islamic education. You think they did both, each reinforcing the other in a dance of memory and expression. The day unfolds with more lessons, debates, and shared meals. You feel the community tighten around you, each face a reminder that learning here is never solitary. Even in moments of doubt or fatigue, you are buoyed by the knowledge that you belong to something greater. As the sun dips low once again, you walk back to your sleeping mat. The day's triumphs and trials settle like soft dust on your skin. You close your eyes, ready to dream of poetry, prayers, and the endless stories waiting to be told. Night falls softly over the dormitory, the sky a velvet blanket sprinkled with countless stars. You lie on your mat, the cool earth beneath you grounding your thoughts as the quiet hum of the evening wraps around the room. The sounds of the day fade into a gentle silence, broken only by the distant call of an owl or the rustle of a sleeping lizard in the courtyard. Your mind drifts back over the days spent learning, the faces of your peers, the steady voice of City Bakayoko, and the steady beat of tradition. You feel the weight of history and the lightness of discovery mingling in your chest like two old friends. Mainstream historical fact. By the 15th century, the Mali Empire's educational institutions had become centers of intellectual life, attracting students from across West Africa and beyond. These madrasa dormitories were more than just schools. They were crucibles where knowledge, culture, and faith were forged. Quirky fact, some say the dormitory walls absorb the whispers of students' past, replaying their debates and dreams on quiet nights like this one. You smile softly, wondering what stories the mud brick holds just beneath your fingertips. The day's lessons, the poetry, the prayers, all blend into a soothing rhythm as your eyelids grow heavy. Historians still debate how much influence these centers had on later Islamic learning in other parts of Africa and even Europe. You think it's clear. There was a spark here, a light passed hand to hand across centuries. Your breath slows, your thoughts soften, and you drift deeper into sleep. The last image before darkness claims you is the baobab tree standing tall and ancient outside, a silent guardian of your journey. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Slowly, the pace of the night calms. The world outside your dormitory softens into shadows and whispers. Breath by breath, your body unwinds, sinking deeper into the warmth of rest. The stars above trace gentle paths across the sky, watching over the sleepy earth. All the noise and bustle of the day fade into a distant memory. Here, in this quiet, you are safe. You are part of a long story, one of learning, growth, and hope. The echoes of ancient scholars hum softly in the walls around you, cradling your dreams. Rest now. Let your mind wander to the stories shared, the songs sung, and the prayers whispered. Feel the cool night air brush gently against your skin. Breathe in peace. Tomorrow will come as steady and sure as the sun. But for now, surrender to the gentle embrace of sleep. Good night, dear traveler.